Hello everyone, it's Brett here, Lionheart84, and we're on Sunday the 4th of June, so I'm doing my monthly garden walk around that I do on the first Sunday of each month if possible. That's weather permitting, if I'm not out busy or I'm not out busy doing things and I've got time. So things are starting to happen now as it's in June, so there's a little bit more to show in these videos, and I thought I'd get this done as it's a glorious day and we'll see what's what. So we'll have a quick start at the sad state of affairs that unfortunately is used to be my glorious Crimson Bonfire cherry, but unfortunately it's been completely destroyed by peach leaf curl this year. I did spray it with the appropriate copper fungicide. It hasn't worked. Unfortunately the plant looks absolutely shocking, and yet it didn't get peach leaf curl at all last year, so I'm very disappointed. Obviously it's got no fruits on it. It had set a load of fruits, they've all died, as well as the leaves, and while I think it'll probably shoot out again a little bit later in the year, it's obviously now in a very sad state, so we might give up on growing any peaches. I really don't want to hassle them to spray them every year. Now looking next at my unnamed kiwi berry, which may be a male. I did this in a little standalone video the other day. It's absolutely covered in flowers, and the interesting thing is it has got it does have a female part to the flower, so I'm still not too sure what this variety is and why it's not none of them are self-fertile. The only ones that develop fruits without pollination are Issei, and I don't have any other kiwis in flower and nothing to cross-pollinate with, so unfortunately, despite this being the first year that they're heavily laden with flowers, it's unlikely that they'll produce any fruits unless there happens to be another kiwi in the area that's flowering and the bees get attracted to both of them. But nevertheless, it's a delight to finally see it heavily flowering, because every year it's been frosted until now, so I've never had any flowers, so it is lovely and ornamental this year. So taking a step back, there's a Daphne there which is coming into flower now, which I've had for several years, which is nice and ornamental. My most recent pawpaw purchase, this one is Susquehanna. It's coming out of dormancy, so this one looks okay, and I'm going to have to get that potted into a larger pot because it won't be ideal in there for long. Very unhealthy looking camellia. It's heavily pot bound and needs repotting within acidic soil. Next to that I've got my medlar, which I have shown in a standalone video. Appears to me at first look as if it's going to set a lot of fruits on it, and may even have to thin them, but if I keep it well fed and watered, because I've up potted it this year, it should be fine. But you can see it's got loads of fruits that look as if they're setting where the flowers have now died off, so that's going to be a very successful year for it. Walking along next to it, I've got one of my mulberries. This one is Carmen, covered in embryo fruits now. Again, it's going to need heavy watering. There's a blueberry next to it which has set large quantities of fruit, which again I'll probably have to bag the panicles of fruits this year, because the birds go mad for them when they start to ripen, but we're still a long way from ripening at the moment, but obviously the weather's suiting them now at last. Next to the first blueberry is my Mammoth pineapple guava, variety Mammoth. Very little sign of flower buds on this yet. I have seen a few embryo flower buds appearing, which I'm not going to bother looking too hard for now, so it is going to have some flowers on it this year. I actually gave this one a trim back because I wanted to try and make it a bit more bushy and compact, so I'm still fairly optimistic I will get some flowers on it and then fruits, but I suspect the flowers on this one will probably materialise at the very end of June or beginning of July, but that should still give us time to get fruits on it. Then at the back we've got theoretically the late season blueberry. I think that one's called Jersey, if I remember rightly. I think I've got a Jersey, a Chandler, and I forget the name of the other one. I think the other one's a Darrow. This is the earliest one here, and again this is covered in fruits. These don't get as big as the other one, but nevertheless there's a healthy crop on them, and the good thing about these panicles is I can bag each one separately. Now, in a standalone video the other day, I showed my only in-ground persimmon. This is an Asian persimmon, but it's a seedling persimmon, it would seem that it's a male flowered variety, so it's absolutely covered in flowers, but they are being born in panicles, and they do all look like male flowers. So this isn't a dual flowered plant, it's males only, so there'll never be any fruits on this one as far as I know, unless it suddenly develops female flowers at a later point. Certain varieties of Asian persimmon are bisexual in terms of the fact they have male and female flowers, and others are either just female or just male, and when you're growing from seed you don't know what you're going to get. Not that I grew this from seed, but I bought it before I had any named ones. Next up I've got my unnamed seedling pineapple guava, or Figaro, which I've kept because it's useful for, it flowers consistently, it has very poor quality fruits that are somewhere between the size of a cherry and a walnut, so not worth eating, but what it does do is have plenty of flowers on it. You can see the buds coming here probably, and it will flower at the same time as my name varieties, so I can at least use the pollen for the purposes of cross-pollinating. Next to that, which I showed in the video the other day, I've got an unnamed pomegranate, looking really super healthy. Did produce a couple of flowers 2 years ago, and yet last year had no flowers at all, and I was expecting it to have a lot more flowers on it, so I don't know why it didn't flower last year, as I didn't cut it back at all and it looked really healthy. So I'm hoping that we might get a few flowers for ornamental purposes this year. It's unlikely to ever set fruit because it's just an unnamed seedling, but it will at least be decorative, and they do have a lovely sort of red tinge to the new growth on it. Tucked away behind there is my Caesalpinia that was cut back hard by the frost. You can probably see the dead growth, but I see there's new growth coming out on the green section, so I'm pleased to say that's looking pretty healthy. And then tucked away behind the pomegranate, which I will be able to show you, is one of my name variety of pawpaws. This is Sunflower, obviously not in a position that suits it because it's probably grown, in the 4 years since I planted it, I think it's probably grown about 6 or 8 inches. So it's not in a good position, but at least it's still alive and looking healthy, and kind of looking the size where it might produce flower buds on it next year, so we'll see what happens. Just fingers crossed that we get something on it in the future. Next to that on the wall is a Acampsis, which I have for just ornamental purposes. That's that has lovely orange trumpet flowers on it, which will probably be out in about July. I've got a butterfly bush here, which I keep for the birds, not for the birds, for the butterflies and the bees. That's a buddleia. Down here on the ground, tucked away behind my recovering Antiopanthus, is my bottle brush, or Callistemon, which you can see is now recovering nicely from the almost total dieback it had in winter. So that's going to make a good recovery this year, and should, I think, grow about 1 foot in height. Now, my next named pineapple guava in ground, which is covered in new growth, is my Triumph. And I can see that it's got absolutely, I cut this back really hard, which the downside of doing that is I will have lost a lot of potential flowering growth, but to be honest it was getting very sparse and hanging over the flower, over the flower border into the grass, and it was a bit of a nuisance, so I needed to try and get it to bush out a bit at the back, which it's starting to do. It has got flower buds on it, so it is going to flower this year, but it won't have the amount of fruits on it as last year. I think you can just about see those on camera, but nevertheless I should get some fruits on it, especially if I'm careful and do some extra hand pollinating to make sure. It may also be that a lot of these shoots will produce flowers, but possibly not until mid to late July. Now this is my in-ground seedling pawpaw that I've had a friend put a couple of grafts on it for me. So far there's no signs of life on this graft here. This variety that he put on was Allegheny, but at the moment those shoots don't look as if anything's happening, and they've probably been on a month now, so I'm not totally sure. Now the other one which he put on this graft he's put on here is Shenandoah, and it looks to me possibly as if this shoot here is starting to show signs of life, so perhaps that one will be successful. I'm actually going to take off these little buds here because I'm hoping that the sap will be forced up into that. Now as regarding fruit set, it's not looking very promising. I've got a couple of flowers that appear to have some embryo fruits on them that are set, tiny embryo fruits, but unfortunately this happened last year, and then come the middle of June or end of June, instead of swelling they all fell off. So I'm not, and I was very optimistic last year and it turned into complete disappointment, so I'm not going to bother jumping the gun this year and being all optimistic. I shall wait until sometime in July and see if any of the embryo fruits have actually stayed. I mean, at the moment you look at these here and it looks there as if these might set, but they got quite a bit bigger than that last year and then unfortunately dropped off, so a bit of a disaster. This is suffering actually, I've noticed, from scale insects in some areas, so I'm not going to bother spraying it. I think I'll just leave them to their own devices and we'll see what happens. So that's my unknown or unnamed seedling growing pawpaw, which on the whole looks absolutely fabulous. I just wish it would set more fruits, but of course it's not self-fertile, which means it has to be cross-pollinated from my named varieties. But in terms of health, the plant's absolutely magnificent. Moving around to the other side, we've got a few figs down here. There's another mulberry here, looks like it's desperately in need of water. This tree here is my Luma apiculata. I don't know what time of the year they flower. Perhaps they don't flower till July or August. I can't at the moment, don't think, see any signs of flower buds. Or is this one possibly? I'm just looking there, you won't be able to see on camera, but it looks to me like it's got a flower bud there, so perhaps this is going to produce a few flower buds this year. We'll wait and see. In ground here I've got my Chilean guava. This one's Kapow, starting to come back from the frost damage that killed it to the ground, so that one is going to be okay. In the ground I've got the remains of my very dead yuzu, unfortunately, and behind it, which I'm going to do a separate video on, my in-grounds yellow cherry guava, again killed back to the ground. Honeyberries here, these are going to go next winter, waste of time, horrible little fruits on it. The fruits are sour, they're not nice at all. I don't know why anybody would want to grow honeyberries unless there are some varieties that are much better. They're very small, they take up a lot of space and grow vigorously, but they're not for me at all. Let's have a closer look at this Luma. I can't see any other flower buds, but as there's one, my guess is there are loads and they're just too small to see. Okay, so here we've got this is my red Szechuan pepper. Had a few flowers on it this year. Don't believe it's set any fruits, just one small bunch, but as it's branching out really nicely now, my guess is next year it will flower very heavily. Looking very healthy. Behind it is my Cornus Kousa. Has got a few flower buds on it. These are just leaves behind it that have this lovely sort of whitish pink colour, and the flowers are in the centre. Don't know if they're going to set any fruits, remains to be seen. Let me see if I can work my way through to the back. things definitely badly need watering. There's a pomegranate that's coming back from the base. I think that one was Molar Delche. Now if it was grown from a cutting, the tree itself died 2 years ago, but if it was grown from a cutting, it means these shoots from the base, these suckers, will also be Molar Delche. We shall see. This is my Illinois Everbearing. Badly needs watering. I can see the fruit's drying up on it, so and they're very small, so I'm going to give those a very heavy soaking today. This is one of my persimmons. This one is meant to be a Hanafuyu. Looks nothing like my Hanafuyu. The leaves look completely wrong. They look like an American persimmon. I'm going to guess that the grower who grew this grafted this incorrectly, or rather didn't name the signs correctly, and I'm convinced this is not a Hanafuyu. Behind it on the ground I've got 2 kiwis. They look very dry. I've got a male and a female there, so they need heavy watering. I'm going to have to do some heavy watering today. In front of it I've got my Shinziki Asian pear. Got a handful of fruits on it, but again a lot of the fruits are blemished and got marks on them, so they're not going to hold, but it's got a couple on it. It looks like they will, but again that needs heavy watering. This is the one that I cut back, the Hong Li. That's recovering really nicely, so I'm very pleased with that. Walking around this side, pink Moldovan. Again, got lots of mulberries on it, but they're small. Again, I think the fault is I'm not watering the plant. That's bone dry, so I need to get that watered heavily today. We've been fooled by this dry weather we've had. That's a Kumoy Asian pear. No, a few flowers on it, but no fruit set this year, or at least not worthwhile fruit set. I think it had one tiny little fruit on it, but it's not going to make it to maturity. But as you can see, the tree's very young, so that's to be expected. I've got a jujube here, which is alive and starting to shoot out last. This first one is a Lee, just starting to put out shoots now. And this one here is the Lang, so I've got one of each. One of my in pot grafted pawpaw. This variety that's a Pennsylvania Golden. Has had flowers on it last year. I've used them to try and cross pollinate the Prima, and possibly it's early days because they could still fall off. It does possibly look like it's set 1 or 2 fruits, but again it's very early days to tell. Next to it I've got my Prima, which has previously produced fruits for me, and again it looks like it might have set a few embryo fruits, but it's just too early to say because they often get to this stage where they start to open up like fingers, and then in 2 weeks time they suddenly dry up and fall off. So all of these plants need really heavy watering. You can see how droopy my persimmons are, so I need to give these major soakings today, otherwise we're going to be losing all these flowers. You can see the flowers coming on some of these Asian ones. This one here is Nikita's Gift. Again, it's droopy, so that needs watering, and that's got flower buds on it. So I must, as soon as I finish this video, come out and start soaking everything. We're not expecting rain here for another week or 2. I'm not going to run through all the fig varieties at the front. Had some Brabers on it. The Brabers have gone. That one just fell off. So it looks like I'm not going to get any Brabers on any of these potted figs. All of the Brabers seem to be dropping off, but we may get some main crop figs this year late in the season. If things go well, then we could get some main crop figs in possibly there's one fig that looks like it might make it to a Braber, and actually I think it's a brown turkey. So we should get some main crop figs on them this year, but I'm not going to run through them all in detail. That's for other videos. Again, I've got a mix of Asian, American and hybrid persimmons that have got flower buds on them, but you can see by the drooping on them that I need to really soak them. I'm going to have all sorts of problems with them dropping. I mean, they don't mind it being dry or drought, but this is not the right weather for them, having no rain at all. Carrying on with my Other plants, this is the Che, or Chinese mulberry there, growing really nicely. It's years and years from the stage where it's going to flower, and it probably won't fruit because you normally need male and female. We've got several more pineapple guavas here. This one I think is the Coolidge, and the one behind is probably Apollo. Has got flower buds, I've noticed, start to appear on this. I cut it back very heavily after I repotted it, so I'm pleased with how that's going. My loquat next to it, or one of my loquats or loquats, one of them's Oliver and one's Mrs. Cookson. Got some yellowing leaves on them, nothing too serious. Again, there's more pineapple guavas at the back. I forget what they are at the moment. Not too desperate because they're not at the flowering point yet, so we don't have to go into great detail. And I'm really only doing a quick run through the garden today anyway, because the interesting things were on the other side. This pineapple guava is Marian, or Marianne. And the one behind, can't remember, terrible really. That mulberry there is a black mulberry, the only one I've got that's actually a Mulbus Morris Nigra. Can't remember what variety it is, and I can't quite read the label from here. My other donut peach, you can see the state of the leaves on that, again suffering terrible peach leaf curl. A variegated Chilean guava that didn't totally die in the winter because it was sheltered by the other plants, and that's now putting out some new growth, so that's promising. This is a lotus persimmon, Diospyros lotus, has got some small flower buds on it, and this is my second loquat. Light's a bit green, leaves are a bit green, but it still looks pretty healthy, to be honest. I'm not going to get in close to the chocolate vine on the wall, the Akebia, but I have noticed there's a few fruitlets that seem to have set on it, so it looks like we're going to get some fruits on that again this year. Here is my next Asian pear. This one's Nijisiki, which I think is also known as the 20th century. Again, it's putting growth on, but again I think that needs heavy watering. I did try a couple of grafts here on persimmons, appear to have failed, but I'll update on those if they succeed at a later stage. That's my two Issei plants. They had flower buds on them, but sadly the snails have eaten every single flower bud, so there's going to be no flowers or fruits on my Issei plants, but at least the plants still look alive and therefore should grow well this year. And once they get tall enough, the snails are less likely to be a problem. Another mine pot pineapple guavas. This one's another Triumph. Behind it I've got my apricot, which I'm pleased to say looks really healthy, that I bought bare root this year. That one is Early Moor Park, so I'm delighted with how that one's looking. Another pineapple guava. This one is Mammoth, so again that's looking absolutely fine. I cut it back really hard when I repotted it, but there's lots of new growth coming, so I'm happy with how that's going. Looking around at the other side is my last variety of pineapple guava. This one is Gemini. That has got flower buds on it, so we should see flowers and potentially fruits on that this year. And other than that, there's just a mix of bits and pieces that have died that I'm trying to save. Said I'm not going into detail on the videos. Interestingly, that little plant there appears to be growing some Brabus. Let's see what this fig is here. That is a Black Madeira, and they're not really known for producing Brabus. I'm quite pleased with those. Last year it had a couple of main crop figs, but looks like it's going to produce some Brabus this year, which means I might get some main crop ones later in the season. That one's no good, that's gone. But this one here and the one behind it, this one down here, actually look quite promising. Now I have, if I can look at it without sun glare in the camera, I've got plenty of well, I say plenty, I've probably got about 7 or 8 Braber figs coming on my I think it's Long Do. It was bought as as a Rouge de Bordeaux, but it isn't a Rouge de Bordeaux. The leaves are wrong and the figs are wrong, but looking quite promising. I think we're going to get some Brabers on this, which should be probably in July, and then if we get main crop figs, still be end of September into October, and I'll probably do some pinching in a couple of weeks' time, which I'll do in another video for people who haven't seen pinching videos previously, which is a way to try and encourage main crop figs. Finally, my Japanese raisin tree is looking pretty good, and also down there is my blue sausage tree, which is recovering from probably root rot it had in winter. It's due for a watering now. As I said, it's so difficult because you're trying to get a happy medium between watering them too much and watering them too little. You have to be very careful in the winter months not to let them get waterlogged, which is probably what happened to this. And now, of course, you've got to be careful they don't get too dry, because if they get too dry, then they can end up dying back. So that's a very, very quick run round the garden, or as quick as I can do without sort of skipping most of the plants. But I thought there's normally a few people who appreciate a quick garden walk around, and when I do things like the persimmons, I'll have to do them in a separate video, because with about 15 or 16 named varieties in pots, trying to cover those one at a time in this length video would stretch it into 40 or 50 minutes, and probably the camera battery will go flat. So if you have watched the video and stuck with me, thank you very much for watching. I'm going to stop the video now and get on with the watering, or we're going to end up with a load of dead plants. That won't make nice watching in the next video. And hopefully by the time I do the video at the beginning of July, we're going to have flowers on the pineapple guavas and possibly flowers open on the persimmons, and we'll see if we get any fruit set this year. So thanks for watching the video, I much appreciate it. Please give me a thumbs up, welcome to share the video, obviously subscribe to my channel and click on the bell if you'd like updates on new videos as they come out. I'll catch up with you on the next video. Brett out for now.